Here's the secret to jazz soloing. Get your left hand to this tom-tom. If you do, and it's playing the upbeats, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, for some reason it just sounds more jazzy when you do it that way. So here's a figure to get you going on that. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's play that as a 2-bar solo, 2 bars at a time, and then that figure. Remember, stop on beat 4, bring the right hand over. Don't try to put that extra note in there. It doesn't matter. 1, 2, 3, 4. So right away, I think you'll notice that having those upbeats really helps, and you'll also notice that 3 and 4 and 1. You're going to have to play that ride cymbal right after that tom hit. So you're not coming from the snare, you're coming from the tom now. Here's another variation where you play the downbeat on the tom and just the and of 2 up here, and then 3 and 4 on the snare. It's going to sound like this. With this variation and the last one, it's like we're just playing on the snare drum and accenting certain notes on the toms. And that's a really good way to go if you just want certain notes to kind of pop out from that pattern. So let's use this as a 2-bar solo, 2 bars at a time, and then 2 bars of that repeated pattern. 1, 2, ready, and. This is probably going to happen at some point. You're going to go for that left hand on the tom, but your right hand is going to go there instead. So if you feel like you're getting crossed up and you're not 100% sure why, make sure that it's your left hand going to play those ands of the beat, not your right, because you're really going to try to do this sometime. And then you get kind of hung up, and then you're backwards. Now, there's nothing wrong with playing backwards, but for now, keep that right, left, right going until you figure this out a little bit, and then you can worry about trying to turn things around backwards. Let's connect these two things together into a 2-bar pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's repeat that twice and make that a 4-bar phrase and trade 4s. 1, 2, 3, 4. When you're playing ideas like that and there's some snare drum that moves across the bar line, you really have to keep track and be counting to know where you are. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1. If you listen to the way that I was just playing that solo, when I got into it, I decided to put a little accent on the downbeat of that second measure in hopes that it might help you keep the place a little bit better. At this point, I'm just going to trade some 4s. I'm going to do a few where I mostly just play time, and just remember when you're playing time, you don't have to get super crazy with it, but if you can get to the toms and move things around a little bit, great. If you just need to play time and hold it pretty close to home, that's cool too. And then I'll begin to expand it out into some of the other ideas that we talked about to give you some idea of how I might use them in context. Again, these are basic ideas, but these are definitely things that I still use. Well, I think this is a good stopping point for this amount of information. If you can already kind of play a solo, this may not seem very exciting to you, but if you've never done this before, I want you to mess around with these ideas. Get this shuffle going. Move the right hand. Get the left hand to a tom. Move the hands around randomly. Try to experiment with some of these figures that I just played, and feel free to alter them a little bit on your own. Turn them into your own thing. If you're experimenting with just moving your hands around randomly in a 2 or 4 bar phrase and going back to time, if you run into something that's interesting, try to repeat it. Try to find your way. I think that some of these melodies and ideas are inherent in people, and as soon as you start to move your hands around a little bit, I think pretty quickly you're going to be able to hear small little melodic ideas. Ultimately, we're starting from a technical standpoint just to move our hands around, but at the end of the day, we're trying to play melody a lot of times. Sometimes it sounds good, you just play the drums, like go, 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 go. And that's very drummy, and that's a cool thing to do. But in this setting, when you're moving your hands around like this, if you're trying to hear a little bit of melody and so forth, I think it's going to be to your benefit, and it's going to make it also easier to keep your place, because certain melodies, banga doom bing, banga diga doom ba ba doo, have a little bit of a flow to them. So in addition to just being able to execute that, it's also going to allow you to keep your place a little bit better. So experiment with these ideas. No matter what happens, do your best to come out on time. If you need to be counting through that stuff to do that, count through that stuff to do it. If you need to just play time because it catches you off guard and you're not sure what to do, by all means, just play time. So you can start with time, and then you can begin to move slowly away from the shore into some of these other ideas as you become more comfortable with them. So don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to try stuff. Do your thing. It's your music.